Hi, I'm Dr. Sandy Queen with Queen Homeschool Supplies, and I'm continuing today with my video series on homeschooling through difficult times. This is actually the fourth video in this particular series. You can find them all on our Facebook group page here. The first one was talking about loss of control. The second was talking about the power of delegation. The third was talking about asking the Lord for a distraction. And today I want to talk to you about looking for the blessings that come in spite of what you're going through. The story that I've been sharing is when my youngest son, Jeremiah, was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 3 and went through 3.5 years of daily chemo and many other things, and just talking about how to deal with all of the stresses that come because of that. And these things that I'm sharing are applicable not only when you're dealing with that particular type of crisis, but any type of crisis, including the one that we're all currently dealing with this coronavirus pandemic at the time of the filming here. So all of the things that I'm sharing in this video series can be found in my book, Homeschooling Through Adversity, which is available at queenhomeschool.com. But today I want to talk to you, like I said, about looking for the blessings that come in spite of what you're dealing with. And I know when you're in the middle of a trial situation, a difficult time, sometimes that's the only thing that we can focus on is the negative and the hard things that we're going through. And we feel like there's nothing good in our day. So I want to challenge you to look for the positive, for the blessings, for the good things that are still there in your day. I'm going to share some of the things that I shared that happened with my family, and some of the positives that we got out of that I looked for specifically, even though during my son Jeremiah's first 3 weeks after his cancer diagnosis, we were stuck in a hospital 7 hours from home, while the rest of our family was most of them were traveling around the country selling the books that we publish. And so, it was a very hard time. My son was given a 5% chance of survival. He did not respond initially to the treatment and was labeled a late responder. So, he was unable to walk, and he just cried night and day and screamed these guttural screams when he would have to have spinal taps because the morphine was not effective on him. And, a lot of horrific things, and a lot of things that I could have looked at as there's only negative that's going on in our life right now. But, it was a challenge to me to force myself to look for the blessings that came in spite of what we were dealing with. And I decided that I would write them down and keep a list of those blessings so that when things looked really bleak, I could look back at that list and be encouraged. And so some of the things that I put on my list at that time may sound kind of trivial or silly to you to look at as blessings, but it was a very hard, very dark time. And so every little thing that I could think of that was positive. Imagine if you're stuck in an inner city high-rise hospital. We were on the 8th floor, and just being stuck there, and you look out the window, all you can see is another hospital, right? There's not even a view. Your child has been given a very lethal prognosis, and you know that it's going to be a very long haul if he survives to make it to the end of treatment. And so, at that point in life, you're looking for anything positive as a blessing. Some of the things that I actually wrote on my list of blessings that came in spite of what we were going through were sunshine outside the hospital window. Because let me tell you, that little bit of sunshine when it's a gray, rainy, dreary day and you're stuck in that hospital room, and that window that you could look at and see some light coming in is all gray and dreary, it doesn't help the mood at all. But when the sun shines, even in inner city Philadelphia, in that one of the top floors of the hospital there, it made a big difference in just the way that we felt. So I put on that list as a blessing, sunshine outside the hospital window. Another thing that I put on my list was cottage cheese. I don't particularly like cottage cheese, but one of the drugs that my son was on was a steroidal drug, and it caused intense cravings for cottage cheese in his case, and many dairy products. But, you know, we were in the hospital and we were stuck with the hospital's menu, and they didn't have cottage cheese in the hospital cafeteria. They did have, believe it or not, a McDonald's in the right next to the cafeteria in the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia where we were. They did at that time. I don't know if they still do. And so at this time, McDonald's had something that they were calling a healthy new menu or something like that. I've never been a McDonald's fan, so I don't know. But I thought, well, maybe they have cottage cheese. So I went down there and they didn't. So I asked the guard at the desk by the door of the hospital if there was any place locally that I could get cottage cheese. And there I was, you know, I didn't have a vehicle, not that I would ever attempt to drive around Philadelphia by myself, because those of you who know me are having a laugh right now because you know that I don't go anywhere. But anyhow, unless someone else is driving. And the guard told me, well, there's a Wawa store about a mile down this way through the college campus. If they might have some, that's the only place I can think of that you could walk to. So I went and I walked down there, and they had one container of cottage cheese, and I brought it back to my son in the hospital, and he ate the entire container that day. And, you know, that went on my list of blessings, because if you've ever had a child on high-dose steroids, that you know about those steroid rages and how nothing will stop them except giving them what they want. And for him, it was cottage cheese. So that went on my list of blessings that came in spite of all that we were dealing with. Another thing for me was the fact that at that time, all my other kids were still healthy. And you know, just every little thing that I could think of, that's what I looked for and wrote down every day. You know, sometimes it was there was nothing new that I could think of, and then I would go back and look over that list that I had already written. But if there was something new that I realized this is a blessing in spite of what we're dealing with, and one of them was finger paints. My son, you know, he was not happy about all these people coming in every 15 minutes, day and night, poking him and prodding him and putting monitors on him and sticking needles in him and all this stuff. And there's a child life specialist center at the Children's Hospital cancer area, and they will bring things into your child's room, such as finger paint. And that was the thing that broke the ice for my son and allowed him to see that everyone that was coming in the room was not going to hurt him. This one lady with the finger paint didn't. And at first he didn't want any part of it because he figured she was going to be sticking needles in him like everyone else that came into the room. But soon he realized that this was a positive thing, and that was definitely something that I wrote on our list of blessings that came in spite of what we were facing. So I want to encourage all of you, whatever your trial is, whether you're holed up in the house for weeks or maybe even months at a time with this quarantine that's going around the world right now, or whether you have a completely different trial that you're dealing with and you're watching this at a different time in history where the coronavirus has passed, and you know, but you're still going through a different type of trial. Don't focus only on the negative. Look for the positive. Look for the blessings that are still there that you're just not noticing right now because of this heavy burden in this trial. But they're still there. Look for them. Write them down so that you remember them and so that you can go back and review them and be encouraged on those dark days. Tomorrow I'm going to share something even more helpful for you. I hope you'll turn in for the last video in this series on homeschooling through difficult times tomorrow.